Our next session is the panel discussion, so I'll introduce the four speakers. First is Khushbu Jain. She's a researcher and social activist. She's currently pursuing her PhD research titled A Sociological Study of Street Children and Youth in Delhi. It was through the course of her PhD that she began sharing and learning from the lives of children who live in the railway premises. Having closely seen the hardships of the children, she filed a petition in August 2012 in the Delhi High Court asking for the implementation of the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights guidelines for the children in contact with the railways and making railway stations child-friendly. The final order favoring the petition was given by the High Court on 13th February 2013. She was also a consultant with the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. We welcome you.
Is this audible or we need to adjust volume? All right. So I am into academics. I study sociology. And I wanted to take a break and I volunteered with an NGO called Jamghar that worked with street children. So we had a daycare center where we would bring children from the street. We provided everything we thought was ideal for children. A room, a space, TV, space for bathing facilities, food. Children refused to come to our center. And to me, that was very questionable as to, street is such a bad place to live in. Why? And we are providing you everything that is good, ideal, which you should want. Why don't you want it? But the children kept rejecting us. And that is when I started researching as to why children run away from these institutions, why children run away from homes and, prefer a life on the street, which is again a very questionable thing to say. While doing that research, I happened to be at New Delhi station where a child came under the wheels of a train and was cut into pieces. Now again, those very high-class sensibilities as to how can children be in such situations where, they die like this. And being in that spot with a dead body in two pieces and then trying and calling NGOs. There are apparently 16 NGOs that work in New Delhi railway station alone. I have never seen those 16 NGOs in the last several years of my work there, but there are apparently 16 plus NGOs. None of those NGOs came when that child came under the wheels of a train. All other children that were there at the station started running away that now we are going to be apprehended because a child has died. So calling police, I called up an NGO as to, what do I do? There's a child who's dead here. The NGO very reluctantly said, okay, call 100, call the cops. And that to me was very surprising as to why wouldn't this NGO want to come and do something? Why is there no structure to do something about it? So it took about 2 hours to complete all the formalities, to the body being removed. And the older boys of the station were asked to remove the pieces of the body that remained. Again, what is that supposed to mean? So I started talking to a lot of NGO heads as to, what is happening? What is going on? There is so much work that has been going on with railway children. I found out NCPCR recommendation for railway children that had come out in 2010, whereas this accident was in 2011 and nobody remembered there is a recommendation that has ever come out. So I wrote to DCPCR, NCPCR. NCPCR wrote a letter to DCPCR. DCPCR wrote a letter to Railways. Railways then sent a reply, which I received after 2 months, saying they have removed 183 children from the station. What has happened to those children and has been produced before Child Welfare Committee. Meanwhile, this had taken about 3 months and I kept learning that children are being pushed out of the station. They are being apprehended by NGOs, by police. And earlier, if this is the station, children are supposed to live at the end of the station because they're not supposed to be seen on the platform where the higher class gets uncomfortable about dirty children being around. So when the train is entering the station, it kind of slows down. Children run, catch the train, pick the bottles and whatever they can pick, and get down when the train is leaving the station. So earlier they were here at the corners. Because of my complaint, they were pushed further out. So now trains were in great speed while entering the station, while the children were doing that. So my complaint, which was to protect these children, had done much more harm than good. So again, this moral dilemma as to, what is happening? It's all because of me. What do you do now? I wanted to get rid of this guilt that I had, honestly. So then somebody said, okay, file a petition in the High Court. Only court can help now. But then we wanted to be very cautious as to, because having seen that what your complaint or your approaching system can do, we wanted to be extremely cautious. That is when I got in touch with CWC, a lot of NGOs work that was happening with railway children, and very cautious with every word that we put in the petition. After a year and a half, all that we said, okay, we want the NCPCR recommendations to come in place. Because we were paranoid about asking anything more. We went to the court. In 3 hearings, we got an order. We still want to call it favorable. I objected to the order then. I object to it today. All that the order said was that you follow the JJ system to take the child out of the station. Now in that 1.5 years, while I was talking to a lot of NGO heads, I've been attacked vociferously for my positions. What is my position? I'm still not very clear about it. So there were clearly different categories of children on the station. However, the only category that people look at is runaway children from home. All the work that you see happening with children on the station are with children who are solo, single, alone on this. Apparently, in the NGO jargon, they are part of communities, as Kavita started with the introduction, that these children are part of communities. They don't exist in isolation as island. However, what I've seen in the last few years of trying to understand this, all the laws treat children as isolated island, not attached to any community. So you take them out. So most of these children that are at the station right now are children who have been restored to homes multiple times, are children who have rejected the system multiple times. And now in my research, I have started to call them residue category. A residue category, all of us are very uncomfortable about. We don't know what to do with that category. We don't want to deal with it. So we'll say that they cannot be tamed, they are ill-mannered, ill-behaved, and once they are adult, they are also criminals. And there is I'm not going to name them here, but they actually complained to police and made sure that all these children were caught in criminal charges and removed from the station so they work with the young children. They can't deal with the older children. So these are the kind of things that are happening. So every time I hear the word protecting children, I'm like, are we actually doing more damage in the name of protecting children? So whenever I've approached these NGOs saying that, there are these older children, what are we doing with them? What is it that we could possibly do while they're there? And I've been attacked like, you're trying to promote child labor by saying let them be on the streets. Now they don't want to go either back to their home or, to the institutional home that we're providing them. What do we do meanwhile if the child wants to be on the street? Are there any possible interventions that we can do? Unfortunately, I don't see an answer in JJ. What are then the options? So High Court order came for a year, nothing happened on the ground. But High Court order was celebrated. After a year, I get to hear an SOP has come in the name of, by the railways for implementation of the High Court order. Now this SOP was extremely problematic. We challenged the SOP because SOP only said take the child out of the station. So we challenged it. So, and National Commission for Child Rights then formulated a working group. We were all a part of that working group in which we tried to bring in all these voices and say that you need to take children's voices on board as to why, despite all the systems in place that we have for several years, what is it that the children want? What is it that they feel? Unfortunately, I took the chairperson to the railway station. The moment she saw those younger children, everything that she understood that I was talking before went into thin air. She was like, such young children on the station, they should not be here. The kind of conversation we had with children. So when we talk about, are we hearing the voice of the child? I want to add one more thing to it. From what perspective are we hearing the voice of the child? In that case, she actually had this conversation with children saying, first thing that you've done wrong is you ran away from home and you came here. Then you don't want, and then you're complaining about the police when you are wrong in the first place. I mean, what is the kind of conversation we are having with children here? How are we looking at those children? This is National Commission chairperson. And this is also all the NGOs invariably that I've been working with. And also us. So in a lot of our own conversations, we have this dilemma that we're still facing about agency of the child and protection of child. Where do they meet? Where do we draw the lines in our own zealousness of protecting the child? So the SOP came, we went to NCPCR, the process failed because nobody wanted to talk to the child, honestly. Now there is a question, what are we so scared of about talking to children, about children rejecting us? Are we ready to face those questions? Are we ready to actually take the blame on ourselves? We are not. We are adults, we know what is right for these children, and they have to be tamed, and we'll tame them according to us, is the attitude, more or less. So NCPCR process failed, 7 of us got together, we are trying to make the process, take the process further. And then another SOP came a few months ago, diluting the first SOP. And we, as a matter of fact, have decided not to really engage with it right now, because engaging more and more with these things only is trivializing the entire issue. Now, disengagement is also not the answer. So I'm actually trying to bring on table all the confusions we have. We have no answers to that. We are all struggling with that. But it is time we start bringing our own struggles on the table. It is time we stop looking at ourselves as somebody who have all the answer, who have the power to protect the child, who will protect the child. It is important to also put our dilemmas on this table. So, for example, I was talking about, I've been interviewing a lot of children who beg. I'm seeing hierarchies amongst groups who beg, hierarchies amongst children who sniff, who don't sniff. So there are a lot of systems that are there. But do we reject begging outright? Do we reject drug abuse? Do I really want to call that abuse? Outright. I mean, this entire human rights sector, most of them get sloshed every night. But that is acceptable. That is in. That, means you have arrived. When it comes to these children, we want to protect them, talking against it the entire day while doing the same thing in the evening. So also, are we a part of the same community, right? But it's the othering that is very problematic, that they need to be helped. I am here to help them there. And also child labor. So every time I talk about children, exploring alternatives, talking to children as to what they would like to do, the question that is always thrown back is, what will the child do until you're exploring alternatives, until the child is rescued? And you're like, okay, he or she will continue to do whatever they're doing. Then you're promoting child labor. What work is good and what is acceptable and not acceptable? I mean, rack picking is not acceptable by us. But for those children, it's the most acceptable thing they do. There have been a lot of programs by various NGOs where they've gone and given them training, various kinds of skills training, given them jobs, got them jobs, and invariably 98% of those children have opted out of those jobs. They've been there for a few weeks to a few months. Why? I don't like to be in that kind of atmosphere where I'm being ruled by somebody. I don't want to go to this job today and I'm then abused by my employer for not going to that job. I like having control over my time, my life here. And this is what I like to do. So over here, I wake up when I want to wake up. I collect bottles when I want to collect from the trains I want to collect. Not work when I don't want to work. I take a holiday and go off to Haridwar or wherever I want to go when I want to go. But, we are all trying to structure it. And then the question is, because I'm also in a space where I don't follow the regular market, where I should have a career, ambition, fit into the system. So I kind of can relate, because these same questions are thrown at me all the time as to why aren't you becoming a professor? Why aren't you taking a permanent job? I don't want to be in that structure. So while that is okay for me, not really. People have problems with that too. The same problems also go for these children. The other thing is the categories of children. Now again, as I said, while the SOP was being formulated, finalized by the railways, the SOP was sent to a lot of railway protection officers. And I've seen some of the copies where they talk about various categories of children. Now, as I said, the SOP only focuses on runaway children from home, solo children, young children who are at the station. All these railway staff invariably said that they are not really our main problem. There are children who come from slum communities. There are children who are from homeless families. There are children whom we then take and produce before CWC. And parents come and take the child back, and the child is back in the station in a few hours. None of the NGOs that are working on this issue, Child Welfare Committee, Railways, MWCT, NCPCR, are ready to consider this category of child. This category is invisible. We don't want to talk about it. Older children above 14 who have been multiply home placed, who have rejected the system, we are very silent on that. This entire SOP is very silent on that. Now the current SOP says only 20 stations where this SOP will be implemented. I'm still curious to know why haven't all of us NGOs actually gone and questioned it. as to why only 20 stations. Why do we keep trying to fall in line with whatever the railways and the government says? I mean, the entire NGO circuit celebrated when the SOP came that, at least railways for the first time have owned the responsibility and wants to do something about it. And I was like, it's their duty. While we are celebrating this, okay, I understand, but it's their duty and they still are faulting on it. Why aren't we questioning it? Why aren't we engaging with that? Even if we are not challenging or dismissing it outright, we also need to engage with the other groups. But we, even in our own NGOs, are not ready to engage with the other groups. Also, when I was talking to my lawyer, discussing this entire thing about alternatives, the JJ seems to not have many options. And he literally said that you have to go and actually challenge the JJ and ask for an amendment or an overhaul of the JJ system also. So every time there is this problem that we have as to something that kind of limits our possibility of engaging with the systems also as to what are the options that are available. What if we go back to the court today? What do we ask? What do we demand? We have to talk about these wider concerns. We have to talk about limitations of JJ. But the JJ is also again celebrated as the most progressive legislation. Now, I am yet to find the progress part of it when it comes to railway children in the current JJ. And then the amendment is even bad. The other thing is when we talk about children, as I mentioned, we talk about children as this isolated island with no communities. Children make groups. Children live in groups. We are human, social animals who are supposed to live in groups, right? As adults, we live in groups. Children live in groups. Most of the time, the interventions find these groups threatening and abusive. Now, for those children, they've made a choice of being in that group. There could be various kinds of abuses that might be happening, which APSA in one of the studies has seen as bartering relationships, bartering sex for various things. Agency part of it. Now we keep questioning as to, how is agency playing a role when the choices are so limited? And then, is that really agency? But for those children so far, it does come across as agency. So for me, it's also constantly questioning as to why I am comfortable with something, why I am uncomfortable with something, and that is not limited to my personal transformation alone. That says a lot about the larger system that is in place. And so if I'm uncomfortable about begging, why is begging making me uncomfortable? Children's sexuality. Every discourse that is available in our country and worldwide is child sexual abuse. The moment you say child sexuality, it comes under the umbrella of child sexual abuse. So I've been talking to a lot of people. There is this book that has come out, Dark Room by Pankaj Butalia, where actually, these are stories of people's lives on child sexuality. Of 10 chapters, 8 are sexual abuse, 2 are sexuality. So while sexual abuse and sexuality goes hand in hand, a child who is being abused also in some way practices child sexuality in other ways. Why are we silent on that? Why this idea of protection, why do we jump at it immediately? We hear about a child in any sexual terms. I mean, it's time we start questioning ourselves a little on that and engaging with it a little more. Also, these laws have been there for so many decades now. What is the information that children have about these laws? So I was at one of the temples. A child stopped by and he was like, I'm seeing you after a very long time. He said, yeah, I got myself arrested. You got yourself arrested? He's all of 14 or something. And he had those grooves in his head, where there was no hair. Like, what happened? So he said he got maggots in his hair. And he wanted it treated. So he snatched the mobile of a worshipper who came to visit the temple and stopped there. Just waited for him, the worshipper, to call the cops. So the cops took the child, to JJB, where he was sent to children's home, and he got his treatment for the 3 months of sentence he got. And he came back. Now, this example shows two things. A, the way these children use laws. B, the kind of information that is circulating. This child was clearly a child in need of care and protection also, if we want to talk about the laws terminology. There are so many NGOs that are there, right? How is it that the child knows that he can get himself arrested and get the treatment, but doesn't approach any of these NGOs to get the treatment done? So this is a question that I don't have an answer to right now. Maybe because he doesn't want to languish in a children's home forever while he'll come out of the JJ system. So how are these laws and information circulating? And how are children making use of it? And how do we then expand the information base that is there and support that information base? So, also this question of neglect by the state, because we say that these children are neglected. I'm actually more conscious of a certain kind of focus on these children than the neglect. Until the SOPs came, until I went to the High Court, children had a life that they wanted to around the railway stations. Because of the last 4 years of work, that life has become extremely difficult for them. So I would rather say that let these children be neglected by the state rather than the kind of focus we are bringing on them. Every time, Dunu keeps complaining constantly every time we meet is that you've stopped working. You don't work anymore. I'm actually scared of working around this. I would rather go speak to these children, be there when the child needs me, in whatever ways the child needs me, rather than have this negative focus that makes their life much more vulnerable, much more difficult. On that note, thank you. So we take the questions.